Security Council. I give the floor to the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic.
شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you, Mr. President. I congratulate you and your esteemed delegation on assuming the presidency of the Security Council for this month. You can rely on our support and our trust in your able leadership of the works of the Council. We also thank the Permanent Mission of Algeria for their successful management of the Council's affairs last month. I express my country's solidarity and sympathy with Greece and its people following the series of earthquakes that struck the Greek island of Santorini, which coincide with the anniversary of the devastating earthquake and its aftershocks that Syria witnessed on these very days 2 years ago. Of course, I would like to thank the Special Envoy, Mr. Geir Pedersen, and the Assistant Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Ms. Joyce Msoya, for their briefings. Mr. President, Syria has embarked on a transitional phase that was launched and outlined during the Victory Conference held in Damascus on January 29, 2025. The conference concluded with a set of decisions that mark a new era in Syria's political history, including the abolition of the 2012 constitution and all the exceptional laws, the dissolution of the People's Assembly, the army, all security agencies, the Arab Socialist Ba'ath Party, and the parties of the National Progressive Front. It also included the dissolution of all military factions and revolutionary political and civil bodies and their integration into state institutions. The conference also decided to appoint Mr. Ahmed al-Shara as the country's president during the transitional phase to carry out the duties of the presidency and representation of the country at the international level, and to authorize him to form a temporary legislative council to assume the legislative functions until a permanent constitution for the country is ratified and comes into effect. During the transitional phase, work will be undertaken to preserve Syria's sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity, to achieve its renaissance through the genuine participation of all Syrians, men and women alike, youth and young women inside and outside the country, to build their future in freedom and dignity without exclusion or marginalization. Work is also underway to form a comprehensive transitional government that reflects the diversity and richness of Syria with all its components, men and women. This government will undertake the work of building the new Syria's institutions until such time we reach a stage of free and fair elections. Based on his mandate as President of the country during the transitional phase, the President of the Republic will announce a preparatory committee to select a smaller legislative council to fill the current void. And today, the President has made a declaration to also define the members to the National Dialogue Conference, which will represent a direct platform for deliberation, consultations, and the presentation of various viewpoints on the upcoming political program leading up to the constitutional declaration that will determine the identity of the state and the nature of its future regime. It will also be the legal reference for the transitional phase. Accordingly, our focus during the coming period will be on the following priorities. First, achieving civil peace and establishing genuine transitional justice that guarantees the accountability of criminals whose hands have been stained with the blood of Syrians. Second, uniting the Syrian territories, upholding the authority of the state and the rule of law over all its territories and restrict weapons to the state possession. Third, building strong institutions based on competence, justice, integrity, and participation. Fourth, establishing the foundations of a strong economy that provides real and decent job opportunities to improve living conditions, restore basic services, and embark on the path of development. Mr. President, my government reaffirms its commitment to build friendly relations with all countries based on mutual respect and common interests. It emphasizes that the new Syria will not be a haven for terrorism nor a source of threat to any country, neighboring countries or around the world. Recently, Syria has witnessed and continues to witness an intense political and diplomatic momentum to inaugurate a new phase premised on strengthening bilateral relations and multilateral relations with regional countries and other UN member states to contribute towards preserving the international peace and security and upholding values of friendly relations and cooperation among member states. This approach has been reflected in Syria's engagement in the multilateral sphere and strengthening the partnership with the United Nations. The Syrian people eagerly look forward to improving humanitarian and living conditions, to providing essential services, primarily electricity, achieving economic recovery, reconstruction, and returning to a path of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. As such, immediate action is necessary to avoid disappointing the Syrian people and to bring about a qualitative shift that meets their aspirations and align with the sacrifices that they have made and the hardships they have endured to build a better Syria by Syrians and for all Syrians. To this end, the Syrian government has demonstrated full openness and has received numerous UN delegations and relevant international bodies to establish a new phase of cooperation in various fields, particularly humanitarian efforts, such as revealing the fate of the missing and forcibly disappeared by the former regime and its security apparatuses, returning the remains of martyrs to their families, and putting an end to the prolonged situation of uncertainty and suffering that they have endured. As part of the ongoing cooperation with OCHA, and you have listened to Ms. Misoya, the Syrian government has renewed the authorization granted to the UN and its specialized agencies to use the Bab al-Hawa crossing for an additional 6 months period until August 7th of this year to facilitate the delivery of humanitarian aid to all Syrians in need. Mr. President, the past 2 months have witnessed the beginning of the return of numbers of refugees and internally displaced persons to their areas. Yet the dignified and voluntary large-scale return still faces numerous challenges, most notably the extensive damage to infrastructure and public and private properties, as well as the lack of essential services, especially electricity, the lifeline of daily life in most areas, as well as the limited availability of medical and relief resources, the deteriorating economic situation, and the widespread contamination with landmines and explosive remnants. In the light of the enormous needs, humanitarian relief workers are raising the alarm about the lack of funding for humanitarian response in Syria, as by the end of last year, only 34.5% of the 2024 humanitarian response plan had been covered. At this critical moment, the funding is still below expectation, and it is very important in this critical moment in Syria's history that the international community responds effectively to the needs of the Syrian people by increasing its financial and humanitarian support. In parallel with these developments, sanctions remain a major obstacle to economic recovery and the creation of an encouraging environment for the return of the refugees. While Syria welcomes the 6 month exemptions and exceptions issued by the US as well as the European Union's decision to suspend sanctions on several key sectors for 1 year, Syria aspires to the complete lifting of sanctions imposed on the Syrian people that are causing a great damage to various aspects of daily life. We are hopeful that the Paris Aqaba III conference to be held tomorrow, that this conference will send an unequivocal message calling for the lifting of these sanctions and supporting Syrians during this pivotal stage in their country's history. Mr. President, the Israeli occupation army continues its assaults on Syria's sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity in violation of international law, the UN Charter, relevant UN resolutions, and the 1974 Disengagement Agreement. Israeli occupation forces have unlawfully and without any justification or prior provocation have breached the separation zone and entered dozens of kilometers inside Syrian territory to forcibly control vast areas that are estimated at hundreds of square kilometers of lands in the governorate of Quneitra, Mount Hermon, and the surrounding areas, extending to the governorates of Dar'a and Damascus countryside, rural Damascus. This illegal incursion has been accompanied by Israeli occupation forces attacks and attacking the residents of the areas they have entered, confiscating their properties, forcibly displacing and abducting many of them, bulldozing large areas of agricultural land, establishing military points, subjecting civilians to harsh conditions and inhumane practices. They have also constructed military bases and surveillance centers, as well as undertook engineering works that have included the construction of a helicopter landing pad on Mount Hermon. This exposes the false claims promoted by the Israeli occupation authorities regarding the temporary and limited nature of these hostile actions against Syria that are entirely unjustifiable. The Syrian Arab Republic strongly condemns the blatant Israeli aggression against its territory and reiterates its call upon the Security Council to fulfill its responsibilities and take firm and immediate measures to compel Israel to end its occupation of the occupied Syrian Golan and to immediately halt its ongoing aggression against Syrian territory and to unconditionally withdraw from all areas it has forcibly entered, fully adhering to the disengagement agreement and respect the mandates of UNDOF and UNTSO, and ensure the implementation of relevant Security Council resolutions, particularly the resolutions 242, 338, 497. Mr. President, as the Syrian people look forward to turning this page of pain and suffering, they firmly believe that their country possesses the essential elements for revival, most notably the human capital, natural resources, and an unwavering will and determination. They are capable and resolute in making every possible effort to ensure the success of this pivotal phase and to lead the country towards a bright future that befits Syria, its people, its rich civilization and human heritage, while building a state founded on law, justice, and equality. We call upon you to stand by Syria during this critical phase so that together we may move forward towards a better tomorrow, one that fosters security and stability in the region and avoids the bleak scenarios pushed by those who do not wish Syria and its people well. These actors fuel division by spreading hate speech, inciting violence, and sowing divisions, particularly through the misuse of social media platforms. Syria will remain a nation for all its people, taking pride in its rich religious, ethnic, and cultural diversity, free from any divisive terms such as minorities or majorities or any other destructive narratives. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative